We will start with opening comments. Senator Billinger will go first. And then we're going to go to the end because Representative Ken Rajas has a funeral he has to attend for his aunt, I believe, and he will be leaving here shortly. It's not because he doesn't like all of you guys. He just has another obligation. And then I will let Representative Mastroni and Representative Wassinger decide how you guys want to proceed. So at this time, Senator, would you please begin?
Well, good morning, and thank you all for coming this morning. It's a really nice crowd, and we all appreciate seeing you up here early this morning. I might just go through and mention what I'm involved with again this year. I'm on basically the same committees I was last year. I serve on the Ag and Natural Resources, which last year we did the industrial hemp, which is getting a lot of attention. We're getting a lot of phone calls. A lot of folks are interested in seeing what they might be able to do with industrial hemp. I also serve as vice chair of the financial institutions, insurance, and pensions and benefits. And CAPERS is already at the forefront, whether we make a CAPERS payment that we had promised to make in 2016, pushed off to 2018, and now that we have some ending reserves, there's a push to get this payment made. Also, on the insurance side, Farm Bureau is trying to come up with a health care benefit for the Farm Bureau members. And so they were in town last week, testified before our committee, and we'll be deciding on that legislation probably, could be even next week. I think Farm Bureau has a day at the Capitol. I think we're going to try to do it that day, but it just depends on how the logistics work out. I am also vice chair of Ways and Means, and Monday we will start our subcommittees on budgets. And last year I was on 5 subcommittees and I chaired 3 of them. Well, this year I only have to chair 2, but I have 6. The subcommittees that I'm going to be involved in this year are Commerce, which is one I had last year, Corrections, which is one I had last year, Office of Technology, which was also I had that last year, and Labor, which I had last year. I have 2 new ones this year. I have the CAPERS budgets and gaming. So them are 2 new ones. In addition to that, I serve as vice chair. Last year I was chair. We alternate back and forth between the House and the Senate on this joint committee for buildings and construction. And so this year I alternated back to vice chair. And the other committees that I'm on include the Highway Task Force. I served on that all summer. We had, I believe it was 11 meetings. We had one here in Hayes, and I know the folks here in Hayes are very concerned about the new roundabouts going in up on Vine Street and the wide load and wind generator, the blades and so forth, trying to make those corners. And so I have visited with Secretary of KDOT about an alternate route, which would come up on the Feedlot Road and then come back on 183 and were wide loads, and that would get off of Vine Street. So hopefully we'll be able to get something done on that. I also serve on the 911 Commission, and I will tell you that Kansas is at the forefront on anything to do with dispatch and 911 services. I also serve on the Disabilities Concern Commission and the Office of Technology Commission. So I'm pretty well covered where I don't have a whole lot of time, but anytime any of you folks are in Topeka and would like to stop by my office, you're always welcome. I'd like to have you come in and say hi. I'll always make time for you. So thank you, and I'll pass this on to Representative Rogers, and then look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you, Senator. Can y'all hear me? All right. I inflect probably project enough, that's okay. I'm really not playing Fortnite on my phone. I'm waiting for my text from my wife to say she's out front. So I apologize for leaving early. This is one of the events I always look forward to, good and or bad. So hopefully those of you that want to chew on me got a chance ahead of time. This is the 4th year now that I'm serving a good portion of kind of greater Ellis County, if you will. We're pleased to have Barb representing the city of Hayes, Victoria, and others down there. We enjoyed Eber, but we're going to enjoy Barb as well. Have a little more responsibility this year in the House side. Speaker appointed me to appropriations as well as I remain on the taxation committee, but I'm chairing higher education budget, which is very important in the facility that we are today and this campus. And so what we're looking at is trying to focus and make good investments in higher education. And a lot of times we talk about education, a lot of focus is on K-12, but the rest of it's also very important. In appropriations, we've done a lot of listening, a lot of hearings on kind of some general overviews. Monday, we'll start in our committees with hearings. The higher education budget actually also deals with things like the state library, that system, as well as the Kansas Historical Society. Those will start on Monday, and then by the end of the week, we will visit with the folks at the Board of Regents, and then Dr. Mason and others will come down and present to our board. In fact, I believe all the university presidents will be in front of appropriations this next week to kind of make that first pitch of some of the things they want to do. Well, if you saw the news yesterday, you saw the revenue estimate that came in, reported for January, shows that we're off 49, 51 million, so on and so forth. So after a good run of, in a sense, higher revenue, basically based on higher taxes, that big pile of money all of a sudden has stopped. Trying to figure out exactly the reason why. So that is, over the last few hours, probably has caused many folks to pause and maybe second guess some of the things that we might be doing. We're in the process of working in the governor's budget, and some things that she wants to see done. There's some things that the legislative branch wants to see done, and I think as we look long term, we need to have the reality that, and I did this a few months ago, really taking an honest look at the economy. We know the economy in our area has continued to struggle, and it's evident it is still around the state as well. And the confidence is there, and probably something I even said probably 4 years ago, that our confidence maybe isn't as strong as what it should be as well. And so I think what you'll find is hopefully cautious optimism. And as we look at building the budget and working with the governor on some of those proposals, is that we do take a strong look at investments, whether it be education, whether it would be help for our disadvantaged mental folks, mental support in some of our counties, and obviously transportation. The list can go on and on. We need to continue to do work with the Department of Children and Families and our foster care system. And the needs are many. The budget and the dollars available is still short. And as we look at in a sense, this pile of money, as many folks say, that's out there, and people are ready to spend it, I think we're ready to make some good investments. But we need to make sure that we take care of our obligations that we've made, and that's where some of that money's going. And to simply continue to kick the can down the road and to bond things out and say, well, it'll be for another time, I would hope that those days are about at their end. As we said a few years ago, the situation wasn't created overnight. It's not going to be done overnight. But over the last couple of years, some things have been changed to get things on a solid footing. And we could talk probably the rest of the time about capers, and I'll let other people talk about that because I'm sure there'll be questions about that as well. So that's, in a sense, the general overview. I would say, as I have said on a couple of television appearances as Republicans, we have said since election night, we will work with the governor in making sure that we do not raise taxes. And that is one thing that we can agree on. And I think there's some other things as we work through, but that is one of the things definitely that that will happen, and I don't think that's going to change. So with that, again, we'll be here and we'll pass it on to somebody else. Thank you.
I'm Leonard Mastroni, representative for the 117th District. I want to thank everybody for being here today. I always like to come back to Fort Hays, my alma mater here, and plug in for the university. A little bit about my district. I live in La Crosse, and I have 8 counties, which would be Rush, Ness, Pawnee, which takes in the state hospital, of course, and also the Larned Correction Facility. Edwards County, Kiowa County, down to Greensburg, over to Finney County and Ford County. I take in the eastern parts of those counties, and then back up to Jetmore and Edwards County. So I have a pretty big geographic area to cover. But as far as my committees I'm on, my first committee is I am vice chair of the Social Service Budget Committee, and that's going to be a very active committee this year because we're all hearing about foster care and this type of thing. So all of those kind of money issues are going to be coming through that committee. The other committee I have is Children's and Seniors. I'm very active on that. The governor in her budget has put money out for foster care and to try to really make some headways in that area because our system is definitely broke. And part of that is the Family First Prevention Act. That was a bill that I worked on over the summertime with the Judicial Council, and we put a bill together that I introduced here last Thursday in front of the Children's and Seniors Committee. And I just want to give you just a little kind of rundown what that does. Is this provides services, which is a 50-50 match from the government to the state, for services that can be done up ahead for children. So if you can identify children in your community that are possibly potential for foster care, the state, our Department of Children's and Family, can come into that home with the child still there and offer services to that family. So it could be services like mental health or alcohol, drug interdiction type things. And the whole purpose of that is try to keep these kids out of the court system and handle the issue up front. That also will, on the back end of the things, will save a lot of money in attorney fees, court proceedings, things like that. So it's kind of a win-win situation for families and the kids and for our society. Also, I'm on the Financial Institution Committee, and just last week we had the director of the CAPERS come in and talk with us about just an overview of the CAPERS system, but we did get into a lot of talk and discussion about the governor's plan to possibly re-amortize the CAPERS funding, and I would say, in my opinion, I don't think it's going to be very successful, but there will be a process that we'll have to go through, and I hope we can come up with a solution other than that. I think that's about all I have.
I always feel guilty when I sit between two people who have multiple counties, and I'm pretty fortunate because I have the southeast corner of Ellis County. It's the 111th district, and I'm Barb Wassinger. I The interesting thing about me is that I'm considered a freshman, and it's been a very long time since I was considered a freshman. So it's kind of funny to hear it. I am on the Tax Committee and the Higher Ed Budget and Pensions Committee, as well as Financial Institutions and Pensions Committee and Higher Ed Budget. So it's been really interesting, as Leonard said, we have had presentations by the CAPERS ahead. And I think Brick said this last night, we really need to hang on and pay what we've promised to CAPERS to continue to chip away at that unfunded liability. We want to make sure that we keep our promises to all the state employees, teachers, fire, staff, everyone. So it's been very interesting this first 3 weeks, and I don't have as much going on because I don't have as many committees as these gentlemen so far, but it's been a pleasure to serve you. So we'll go ahead and turn it over.
Normally, I like to start with the broader questions and almost funnel down to more specifics. But there was one question here for Representative Rajes that I'd like to start with since you will have to leave. So, Representative Rajes, and certainly others of you can comment on this as well. Will you support any increase to the governor's proposed $9 million increase to higher education to help regain the $85 million requested?
Will I support an increase?
To the governor's proposed $9 million to higher education to help regain the $85 million requested.
Sure. Well, as the chairman, I mean, I think we're looking at the big picture, and we'll listen to everybody and look for their enhancements. What I have told the presidents and those from the universities and community colleges and technical schools that have been by so far is my first goal is to make sure we at least have what the governor has recommended. I think there are some opportunities in talking with leadership to hopefully enhance that in some form. One of the things I think that we're looking for as we look through the appropriation process is specific projects, specific situations, programs. So I will fight for an increase, absolutely. But again, I think we need to be cautious and not have a false sense of security that we have a lot of extra money. The last 4 budgets have been biennial, so many folks that serve in the legislature, we've dealt with that. Right now, we're dealing with a 1-year budget. We're still dealing with the new governor. We're dealing with some new situations. But what we have been told and in discussions is that this may be the year for increases. To get the full increase of what the cut was years ago, it won't happen. Nobody's going to be made whole from those from years ago, I don't believe. But our hope is that we will be able to increase that. But we're looking forward over the next 2 weeks, basically through the month of February, on what the universities and colleges are bringing for what they want to do. So I will be an advocate, and we sit in discussions in the Appropriations Committee to fight for more funding for higher education, yes.
Would any of the others like to comment on that question?
Well, pardon me, there is a problem. We've got a pie of money, and everyone needs a piece of it. So I know that everyone is interested in trying to upgrade the amount of funds that are given to each area, because as you've heard, we're having problems with transportation, we're having problems with corrections, we're having problems with the foster care system, where we need to pay back CAPERS. So we need to be judicious in how we split up the money that we do have so that we don't leave anyone out, and just make sure that we're as equitable as we can possibly be.
Okay.
I don't think any of the 4 of us would say we wouldn't want to get as much money to higher ed as possible. However, to sit here at this time, it's a little premature to say that we would be able to do any amount. And I would just point out, we have an ending balance of about $900 million. And if you really look at that, there's over $100 million of that was a skipped CAPERS payment, okay? There's $317 million of that was borrowed from the PMIB. There's $300 million of that continues to be swept from KDOT. So like I said, I think it's just a little premature. I think we all support not only higher education, Jerry Michaud's here, our most vulnerable citizens, some of those folks make $8 an hour. $8 an hour. I think we can do better. And we have a lot of these challenges that we need to look at. And so, I think we're going to have a lot of challenges. I think this first year we're probably going to be okay, money-wise. But going forward, we got to be very careful and conscious of what we do.
The three questions I have in my hand actually were inspired by things happening at the federal level, wondering how it's going to impact our state level. So the first question, given the recent federal government shutdown and the many Kansas citizens who are furloughed, is the Kansas legislature considering lifting re-employment requirements for furloughed feds?
Is that Adam's bill? Is that what Adam's bill is? Adam introduced it, Adam Smith introduced it.
I don't know.
We can't hear you.
Representative Smith introduced a bill like that, I think, this week. I don't know much about it, but that's really about all I can say. The federal, deal is, there's a lot of things. Somebody did ask if the Kansas government could shut down, and we're not like the feds. We won't. Even when the ice storm came, at least legislatures, we were still working. Everybody else went home, but we were still there.
Well, one of the things I will add, if you would like to put your information on how they can contact you back in case something does develop, all of these will go to you and the legislators, and you are able to process and continue communication as needed. So did you want to make any more comment on that?
I'm also not familiar with, what we're really even talking about. I hadn't heard anything about it, to be honest with you.
Okay. A different question, but still somewhat federally concerning. With the fear of the Supreme Court possibly overturning Roe versus Wade, states such as New York, Virginia, Rhode Island have laws or bills to ensure their state allows abortion up until and right after birth. Has anything of this sort been introduced in the Kansas legislation? Okay. Well, I'll keep going. This is about the Convention of States. The Senate in Wyoming and Arkansas passed a resolution for the Convention of States. Nebraska and South Dakota are debating it. Is there any discussion in the Kansas legislature regarding the Convention of States?
There are a lot of no's today. There is not, that I've heard. We've seen a lot of the Convention of States people coming to discuss it with us. So I know that they're trying to get something started, but I haven't heard of anything.
We have in the past, and I have supported it in the past, and we'll probably continue to support it depending on how it's written. But I don't think we had. I'm thinking it was maybe even 2 years ago the last time it came up and it was voted on. So I don't know of any legislation at this time.
Okay. Well, I'm guessing the questions might get a little bit harder. This is regarding the budget. And both of these questions are very similar, so I'm gonna read them both to you, and then if I need to reread, please let me know. But in essence, the governor has proposed re-amortizing CAPERS to make room for other budget priorities. Conservatives are objecting. The question this person asked, why is CAPERS only a priority now? But let me continue. A different question that's very similar, you all say you support many things, higher ed, CAPERS, KDOT, etc. Yet you campaign on lower taxes. So how do your words and campaign promises make sense? So in essence, I believe that there are definitely some discussions regarding the budget and how we can do all. So I can give you these questions if you'd like to see them.
I'll start out and then let the others join in. You know, first part of that question was the reamortization. The reality of reamortization, we looked at that 2 years ago. Governor Brownback wanted to do this. We looked at it. The costs, they're not doable. If we do this, the last number I seen, it would cost us $7.4 billion by pushing this down the road. And you know, I mentioned earlier, we have a CAPERS bill in the Senate that we're going to vote on Monday. In 2016, the finances were tight, and we skipped a CAPERS payment, the last one. And the legislature made a promise, we'll pay this back in 18 with interest. That was the promise made. We got to the end of 18 last year, and it was still not very clear, and rightfully so, without knowing where the revenues were, we didn't make the payment. We have a $900 million surplus at this time, and we have folks that want to pay this promise. It costs us $630,000 a month not to make this payment. So far, since we missed this payment, it's almost $19 million. That's real money. And to say this is not important to us, since 2011, when I first got to Topeka, we focused on trying to fix CAPERS. We had one of the worst funded state pension plans in the country. It was on the verge of bankruptcy. We have put $5.1 billion into this since 2011. $5.1 billion. And now we're talking about reamortizing and costing us 7.4. It's just, I don't think anyone would do that with your home loan. I mean, that's what we keep comparing this to. It's like, you know, we're finally getting to where we're getting close to making the actual required contribution. If this bill passes Monday and it goes through the House and the governor signs it, it'll be the first time in 25 years that we've hit the actual required contribution. First time, 25 years. I think everyone knows when we talk about lower taxes, and that was part of the question, was how do we talk about lower taxes? I don't go anywhere to any of these town hall meetings when folks don't come up to me and say, these taxes are getting too high, in particular, property tax. And, you know, we have to try to balance in the chairs we sit, and we try to do the best with what we have. And we don't really control property tax at the state level. That's done with your mill levy at your county level, but we sure hear about it because it's putting the squeeze on a lot of folks. So I'll let the rest of the folks comment here.
I'll just make Senator Billings said that very well, but I can say this, talking to a lot of representatives, that there is a huge support for CAPERS out there, and to get this funding or this payback taken care of. I'm pretty close to it. Also, I think we only have right around 10 years left to get this paid off, and I really hate to see the amortization kick in for 30 years, because like Senator Billinger said, $7.4 billion we'll leave for our grandchildren, and that's just plain wrong.
Capers was refinanced in 1993 with a 40-year term. We're actually at the last 15 years of paying off that loan. Just like with your home mortgage, as you get closer to paying off to the payoff date, you pay more and more principal. And for years, all we did was pay interest. And now we're just getting to the point where we're starting to pay off all the principal. And like my colleagues have said, it's important that we finish this. So I think it's a really bad idea to all of a sudden refinance again and string it out and leave it for our later generation to have to pay for. We need to take care of it now.
I appreciate the question. I'm not sure if that was directly to me or not. This is a nonpartisan issue. And for somebody to say now a certain party cares about it, 2 years ago, Governor Brownback wanted to do this. A Republican governor and a Republican legislator shut it down. It's being fiscally responsible. It's not political. It is absolutely not political. We talk about supporting higher education. We say we want to support K-12. We want to support our most vulnerable. We want to make sure we make wise investments with your dollars, period. How do we do that? By looking at the numbers, by talking to folks, and by going to our communities and sitting down with them one-on-one, by talking with our realtors and saying, what are the biggest challenges of why people can't buy houses? Is it because of a down payment? Is it because of affordability? Is it because of not the right jobs? Those are the things that we try to do, and we have to make good investments in them. When we talk about, there's a lot of things going on at the federal level about taxes and how the rich, the quote-unquote rich, aren't paying their fair share. Well, who's rich? Somebody that makes $1 more than you. Because we're not rich, but somebody that makes more than me, well, then they're rich. They are not paying their fair share. We have worked hard to bring back a three-legged stool. We have worked hard to make sure the right positions are in place and the right policies are in place so we can make those investments. Whether it be Capers, whether it would be trying to do the right thing with what happened on a federal level with the tax code, and to be a state to keep that money that is rightly Kansans who did nothing wrong. We're just following the rules. It's much like, as I was telling somebody before we started, you got your paycheck, you went down to the bank and cashed it, put it in your billfold. You had a lot of errands to run, and as you were running up and down Main Street, your billfold fell out. But you were running to the next place, you realized your billfold with all that money was there. But somebody else a few steps behind you picked up that wallet. And instead of finding that person whose wallet it was, they said, look, we have this money. Is that the right thing to do? We can argue philosophically of who's getting the money, if it's two brothers in North Wichita or if it's mom and pop small business owner. We shouldn't penalize people that are doing the right thing and following the rules. It's just that simple. We can talk philosophy about making investments and choosing. It's just like in Topeka, we have many days during the session everybody's there to make their case. Everybody's a constituency. And so what we have to do is we want to listen, and then we have to determine. And ultimately, when it comes down to the budget, it's basically 4 people put together something that goes to the governor.
Curious if you think the legislature or perhaps yourself would support passing legislation that taxes the internet sales.
That's something that's being debated in tax committee. And the reality is that 80% of internet sales currently are being taxed. They've done it themselves. Places like Amazon, eBay, Etsy, those kind of places are already starting to do that. So it's a very small amount, and those are things we have to discuss. Do we want to do digital goods, like downloaded books? There is a discussion. I'm not sure where that's going to go, but that is in tax committee right now.
I've got to go, but sorry, I'm going to leave. I'm not going to throw any more firebombs, but there's going to be a number of those situations. Keep one thing in mind. I'm sure you're talking about sports betting as well before I'm gone. All these different things that are proposals for either tax increases or voluntary tax increases, they're not silver bullets. They're 5, 10, 15 million if you're lucky. So keep any of these things in mind. The report in the committee of the top 100 that sell on internet sales, do internet sales, 80% are 80 of those top 100 are already complying and doing that. So as far as is there any great big company that's out there that is just willing to do that? No, but there's some other. I mean, we need to look at some of our other taxes as well on industries that are struggling, that we're not getting much revenue either. But that's for a whole other story. So, thank you, Midwest Energy. Thank you, AT&T, and thank you all for taking the most heated questions.
Drive safe. Thank you for being here, Ken. All right, well, let me move along to the expansion of Medicaid. 3 questions regarding that, and the first 2 really just wanted to know what your support is in regard to the expansion and why, as well as, more specifically, is the Medicaid expansion a cure for rural hospitals, or is it a liability for the state that could cost more than the benefit as the federal government adjusts their compensation? So do you or do you not support the expansion, and why, as well as that follow-up?
I'll start out. I voted for Medicaid last time. There are 2 requirements. 1, there has to be a work component, and 2, it has to be close to revenue neutral. The governor's proposed $14.2 million for Medicaid expansion. They're estimating 150,000 folks. You do the math, that's about $90 a person. I don't think that's going to go very far. There is a real concern about what the costs are going to be and whether or not they are doable. There also has to be something in there that says that the federal government is paying 90% today. As long as they're at 90%, we're okay, but if that drops, the state doesn't have any additional funds for this.
I agree with what Senator Billinger also said, but I want to give you an idea what my district's like. 8 counties in there. I have 6 critical access hospitals. Out of those hospitals, we probably run anywhere from 85 to 95 employees. Well, for a small community, Medicaid expansion is very critical. A lot of these hospitals are not, they don't make a profit. They're usually running a little bit in the red. Medicaid expansion can help these hospitals greatly. It's definitely not a cure, but it can help quite a bit. I supported Medicaid expansion before. I voted for it before, and probably will continue to with still, but having the idea in mind of what Senator Billinger said, we need to be cautious and make sure we're doing this right.
Well, and the other big problem with Medicaid within the state is the reimbursement level. So these hospitals are losing money with such low reimbursements. So we have to fix that, and I also discussed with out in front of the forum is that we have a doctor's shortage, and many doctors won't see Medicaid patients. So funneling more money in without trying to deal with those as well won't help these people that want expansion. We need to. That's another system that's broken. So there's so much to look at. Of course, we want to take care of all Kansans. That's not an issue. But at $90 a person per year, I'm not sure how that helps them as much. Right now, they are being seen in emergency rooms, the ones that aren't being covered, which is another problem for the hospitals. So this is such a complex issue, and we do need to see that and see what we can do about the doctor shortage and people that won't accept Medicaid patients.
Along the medical, this one is, do you see efforts to privatize state mental health hospitals are put to rest?
I'd like to comment on that. The Kansas Department of Aging and Disabilities has talked with about doing some privatizing at the Osawatomie State Hospital, but that's a totally different situation than what Larned is. There is no talk, at least as far as I know, in dealing with the secretaries about any kind of privatization at Larned State Hospital. I make no bones about it. The hospital has some problems right now. Over the summertime, I met with what they call the Pawnee County Leadership Committee, and they discussed ways to help the state hospital by partnering the community with the state hospital. Right now, we have a shortage of staff there of 252 people. And the hospital has right around 700 employees. So almost 1/3 of that is short on staff. I got this group together last Wednesday, and they came to Topeka, and they were introduced to the whole entire house, and also set them up with key representatives in the health committee, things like that, to talk to them of what we can do to get some of these vacancies filled up. And what this committee has done is they have put a website together. It's called larnedcares.com, and it's kind of a one-click thing on your computer where you can go directly into the Human Resource Department, and they will help you and assist you in the application process. I'll be honest with you, the state of Kansas's Department of Administration procedure to get a job there at Larned is very complex, and it requires a lot of, time and stuff to go through that process. So this one-click process that we're doing now, we're hoping that will help in some ways to get more employees at the state hospital. But that's just a huge number. And I talked to a lot of human resource people about that, and they said it's just almost staggering to know that we have that many shortages there. But a lot of it stems from a $14.66 starting as a CNA out there, mental health CNA, and that's a salary that's competing with McDonald's. And if a person has their choice, they'll probably go to work at McDonald's because being a mental health CNA is going to be a much harder job. But it is a profession, and the people, the young people who are coming into the work market, if they're looking for a profession, we need to capture those people and try to get them into the mental health field and have them trained and make a future of it. And that's the only way we're going to really pick up these vacancies that we have. Thank you.
I might just add on to that. Mental health is a real crisis here in Kansas at the present time, and I hear from almost every county that I represent, and that's 14 of them, about the issues that these folks end up in our jails, in our emergency rooms, and it's we've got to do better and figure out a solution to the mental health issues in our counties. So I know we've got some different committees that are looking at some maybe new ways to look at these, you know, maybe some crisis centers and so forth. So hopefully we'll be able to improve that.
All of these problems have so many layers on them. We can't fill positions because we don't have enough people in Western Kansas. We can't fill mental health positions because we're not getting enough graduated from schools in order to fill those positions. And then you keep going and seeing all the layers of problems that we have. And Senator Billinger is correct. It's not a stretch to say that most jails have become mental health centers. You go in and you see all the medications that have to be dispensed in the jails, and it's a crisis. But we have a rural revitalization subcommittee, and they meet every morning. So, Representative Don Heineman is in charge of that. They've been meeting for an hour and a half, 2 hours every morning to try to get some answers. What can we do to bring people out here? But then that also hinges on taxes. Property taxes, is particularly in the western part of the state, have risen so much we have people moving out. So there's a lot of things we're working on, trying to figure out if we can get an answer.
That's a great segue to the next question. Regarding the Rural Revitalization Committee, can you share what initiatives you want to see this committee take up?
I was talking to Don Heineman day before yesterday about his committee, and they're in the stage right now where they're just gathering information. But this committee is just, matter of fact, they worked all day Friday. We had a pro forma day. Some of the representatives went home early, but that committee stayed and worked because they have so many people coming into that committee with ideas, and they're having to kind of gather that information and decide what committees they might farm some of that information out to other committees to help. But this is a new committee. It's a big committee, but it's going to be a very busy committee, and I think we're going to get some good ideas out of it.
I'm not familiar with any particular programs that they're looking at, but I will mention that a few years ago we implemented the rural opportunity zones, and Ellis County is not one in the rural opportunity zone, but as you get west of here, I think every county west of here is part of that, and it basically lets folks move into rural communities, and they get a break on their taxes. And this program costs the state $0 because today we're getting zero. And if Errol's son would move into Trigo County from Colorado, we'd still be getting zero. But he'd move there and he'd have maybe a couple children in school, work for a business, pay taxes, buy goods and services, help keep the grocery store going. One of the counties that's really taken advantage of this, and there's a lot of them that have, and it's been a very, very good program, but Greeley County is the smallest county in the state. I think there's like 1,200 people live in the whole county. And the last I was told, they had like 48 people have moved into that county and taken advantage of the rural opportunity zones. And they told me one of them was a medical doctor. Now, can you imagine that guy going to his wife and saying, "Oh, by the way, I want to take a job in Tribune, Kansas." She goes, "Well, where's Tribune?" You go, "Well, it's kind of in the western part of the state of Kansas, you know." And oh, by the way, when Johnny turns 5 and he wants to do something special for his birthday, and you say, "Well, what do you want to do, Johnny?" He says, "Well, how about McDonald's? Can I take 2 of my friends and we'll go to McDonald's?" It's 60 miles one way to the closest McDonald's. There are challenges in trying to recruit folks to rural Kansas. And, you know, we're very successful with folks that maybe grew up in western Kansas, or maybe marry a guy or a gal that grew up in western Kansas. There's a greater chance of us getting them back because they do know what the quality of life is in rural Kansas. But someone that has never been there, it's quite a challenge, and I really hope that this committee can come up with some great ideas. Like I said, I've been very proud of the rural opportunity zones. I supported that from day one, that it has been successful in many of the counties, especially border counties. It's been very good. So,
Thank you.
I just have one other comment.
Please.
I do know for sure that probably one of the top, 5 issues is going to be broadband service. We need to really work hard on that. One representative gave the story where he just recently had a husband and wife doctor team come into their community, and before they showed up, they asked about internet service, and they said, "Yeah, we have internet service out here." Well, after they got their practice going, the internet service was less than desirable, and the doctors talked about leaving, and so they got some people together from their phone company or some of the providers of that service, and were able to accommodate the doctors. But that's an example of how important broadband is to our community. If we want people to come out here and live and run internet businesses, whatever, we need to have that kind of service out here, and it's a big conversation in the legislature right now.
And the exciting thing, I think, and Midwest Energy is part of that, telling us that they're working on a way to deliver broadband through electric wires. The only problem with that is now we have to figure out how to get the fiber to each house. But if they're able to figure out how to get the ability to connect within these communities, then we can work on the fiber to each house, which is a lot of money for infrastructure. So that is a very important thing for the rural communities.
Okay. Last fall, the legislature convened a joint task force on future transportation funding. The report from that task force has now been released. One of the recommended actions is an exception to the property tax lid for local infrastructure projects. What do you see as the likelihood of that passing this session?
thank you for the question. I haven't seen any bills for that yet, but I would think it probably would be a pretty popular among the legislature myself.
It is. I think they would be interested in that. Then here's another layer, we start raising property taxes within western Kansas. Our older people who are on fixed incomes can't afford that, so then they move out of rural Kansas. And the other layer to that is most of the time they're the ones that are helping provide child care for their younger people. So it's I know that you were on the task force, so I haven't gone over the report yet, but I'd be open to just about anything.
Senator Billinger, Representative Rajes, and Representative Mastroni have already established a record based upon their present performance and service. Obviously, since our freshman, Representative Barbara Wassinger, is the unknown of the group, there are several questions here that they would like to have you answer, but certainly I think it would be an interesting aspect to also give the mic to the other two as well. So to continue on transportation, Representative Wassinger, will you continue to support taking money away from the KDOT, Kansas Department of Transportation?
Absolutely not.
Can you explain?
If we can't, as Kansans get to where we're going on decent roads, that's a problem. Also, for economic development, we need to be able to make sure that we have strong interchanges, et cetera, for these companies to even look into where we are and consider us.
Would the other two like to comment?
Last 2 years, I've served on the Transportation Committee, and this year I do not serve on it, but my opinion hasn't changed any. We need good highways. We need a good infrastructure for our state. With the highway plan that they have coming out, I just want to make sure that the plans that have been in the old highway plan stay in the same seniority as they are, so Western Kansas doesn't get knocked out of a project that we need. So
I've never liked taking money from KDOT. I think it's wrong, but to say that it won't happen, the proposed budget of the governor is still taking $200 million and may be forced to take more. The reality is, when you have bills to pay and no money to pay them, you look to what sources can you get the revenue from, and one of them has been KDOT. And you know, it's been known as the Bank of KDOT. That's what it's talked about in Topeka, and it's pretty sad. One of the things that I will tell you on the task force, and I think was probably unanimously, maybe 100% of the folks all agreed that whatever we come up with as far as a new plan, that we try to secure funding that cannot be swept. So making sure that those funds stay where they're supposed to be. And unfortunately, KDOT and Capers have been the two that have continually been shorted whenever the state has a shortage of revenue.
yeah. Last year we talked a lot about a fuel tax, and I don't know how popular that is, but that is one tax that can be used for highways that cannot be swept, where your other sales tax that goes into the KDOT fund can be swept.
Again, this would first be directed to Representative Wassinger, but I'd like to hear the other two as well. Well, actually, this one is specific to Barbara. Sorry. Representative Wassinger, you ran on a platform of Vote for Change. What change do you plan to specifically pursue, and how will it positively impact the lives of Western Kansas citizens? Please give at least 3 specific examples.
At least 3. Continue to it was the same kind of thought process that I had as a commissioner. Stop taking money from the Transportation Public Works. It's a big pot of money, and everyone thinks it's easy to do, kind of like you said with Capers. I'd like to see that stop. I'd like to see Capers paid back. And I'd like to see something done with the mental health of our state. So there's so many things that need need to be taken care of. And we just cannot continue deficit spending. We spend more than we bring in. And I don't know about you, but in your family, if you're doing that, you're in a real pickle. And that's where the state has been, because we continue to spend more than we bring in. We have to live within our means, and that's what I'd like to do. As one person, I'll do the best I can. Affecting change alone is difficult to do, but if I can add to the voices that want to stop this deficit spending, then I think I'm doing the job that I was meant to do.
One thing I do want to clarify, when I say capers, once money goes into capers, it can never be touched. It is a lockbox. What happens is we postpone or don't make the required contributions. That's what happens. That's how capers gets shorted. You know, if we don't have the money to make our contribution from the state level, the employees always make theirs. Theirs goes in every month out of their paycheck. It's the state that sometimes doesn't get theirs in. And like I said, if this bill passes Monday, it's going to be the first time in 25 years that we've actually put the required amount in.
Okay. Last one specifically for Representative Wassinger, but this would be one I would like to ask the other two to share upon. But first to Representative Wassinger. What amount of time is acceptable for you to miss in Topeka while serving as our state representative?
I don't think it's ever acceptable to start thinking that you can miss sections of the legislature. So I'm not sure that that's quite a fair question, since I haven't missed anything. No one wants to be absent from any session and any committee, and I know that that's the best way to learn quicker and get as much information as you can. We have a lot of informative things. So sometimes it can't be helped when someone is ill. We've had a couple of legislators that have not been able to be in session because of serious illness. Is that acceptable? I would say probably. I don't think anyone would ask someone to come in if they have a significant illness and can't be there. But
I take my job very seriously, but unfortunately, 2 years ago, my wife was put in the hospital, and for 3 days, and I just need to take care of things at home, and sometimes that happens. But then this gives me the opportunity to talk to you about transparency. Right now, we have audio and in some cases video type presentations that you as the public can tune in. Michelle over here, we just talked earlier, she was able to listen to testimony going on in one of my committees that she was very interested in. And so that's, if you go to the legislative website, at the very top of that website is a little icon there where it says audio video, and you can click on that and it brings up a menu, and you can select, it has the times, and you can select what committees you'd like to listen to. And the chairmen are doing a great job of making sure if this is a 1:30 committee or a 3:30 committee, that they start right then. So you pretty well can count on be able to listen to that committee and what's going on in that particular committee. So anyway, and the other thing is we do have a YouTube station now, and I'm not sure how that all works, but I've seen it on computers and stuff, and it's pretty good thing for the public too. So transparency, we're really working on that a lot, and to keep things above the board.
Well, as far as missing any votes, I've never missed a vote in the Senate. Now, there's been times where I've been in conference committee and they may have had a vote or something that we were actually in another room, maybe on a conference committee report or something like that, but I don't recall ever missing a vote in the Senate. When I was in the House, my uncle died, and I don't think I missed a vote that day, but I went to his funeral, and I don't think there was anything voted on, but there could have been, so I could have missed one. But I take it very serious. I think most of your legislators, especially in western Kansas, take it very, very serious. I drive all over the place. I just, coming into Hayes here, I just turned over 263,000 miles on my car. So, you know, I travel, and I think these are important. I try to make sure that I get to all of my communities, and I make sure that I get to all my committees. And, you know, there's an occasion where last year at the end of the session, there were some folks in the House of Representatives that had scheduled you know, maybe a wedding. I know one of the representatives' daughter got married, and he had to be gone, and we were working that Saturday, and so he missed a vote. There were some votes missed by a few folks that had some different vacations. I would have never done that, and I think it's wrong that they would schedule a wedding is not wrong, but a vacation is wrong. You know, that you would schedule that knowing that you could run over into the legislative calendar, it might run over, then that you might miss that. But I'll tell you about one guy that I know that sat behind me in the House, had triple bypass surgery. And he was only maybe, I don't know, 30, 40 days from surgery, and the session started, and he come up. And that's how dedicated some of these folks are. He sat there, and there were several days I'd look back and his nose was bleeding. The guy shouldn't have been there. His health wasn't quite there yet. But there are some that maybe take advantage of it, but most of them are working very, very hard. And I have confidence that these two and Representative Rogers they're going to be there.
And since this was directed particularly to me, I think it was something that was came out during the election cycle before the voting day that said that I missed so many meetings. When you go into how many meetings there were, over 14 years, it was less than 10%. And during that time, my mother was hospitalized in Georgia. I don't know any of you that don't think your family's more important than just about anything. I went down for that. I also had open heart surgery to correct a congenital heart defect. And less than 3 weeks after my surgery, when we were trying to hire a new county administrator, I had the candidates come to my house so I could meet them and be part of that vote. And then I went to the meeting and took part of the vote in the county commission meeting. That evening, I got a phone call from my cardiologist who said, "Tell me I didn't see you at a meeting." And I said, "I didn't drive there. I used the elevator. I swear I went home and went right to bed." You know, it is really unfair to characterize me as not taking my job seriously, because I have both in the city commission as well as the county commission, and I continue to do so in the legislature. And I hope that particular fallacy about me is put to rest.
Could any of you comment on what Governor Kelly meant by no more, quote, no bid, unquote, contracts? Can you identify what contracts or area of the government she was referring to?
I can't tell you any in particular, but there has been cases where the state has went out for contracts and didn't get competitive bids. But I think it's pretty rare. But anytime it happens, you know, it's our job to oversee and make sure that everything's done properly, that there wasn't some kind of deal made or, you know, beforehand or something. And I personally don't like no bid contracts. I think I think everything that comes up should be bid on, and so I can't speak to anything in particular, but I know there are some. We see them in the budget, and we ask. So,
A lot of times we don't get involved with some of the contracts that are happening, and I can give you an example. Going back to Larned State Hospital, if you apply for a job out there, you have to go take a P-test in Barton County, Kansas, and drive 25 miles to do it. And why in the world we have a contract to do that that can hurt the application process, I have no idea. But I can tell you this, I am looking into that, and because we have a very capable hospital in Larned, I'm talking about the Pawnee Valley Hospital. It's a very nice hospital, University of Kansas Hospital, that's quite capable of taking a P-test. So, so some of this just doesn't make sense, but that's why you got legislators, so we can look into this kind of stuff and try to make things better.
I think every level of government struggles with that, where something slides through that hasn't gotten a bid. And I know for a fact everyone that I've worked with really wants everyone to get an RFP and get competitive bids. It's the best thing for the taxpayers. And so I'm sure that's what she's talking about.
Okay. Well, let me read this next. Okay. The next 4 questions I have in my hand, and we'll probably begin wrapping up. So if you are dying to get your question asked, please write it and get it to Carrie here quickly. How have you seen new tariffs affect Kansas industries, and how do you plan to keep those industries a priority in your legislation?
New tariffs.
you know, we don't really deal directly with them. You know, I'm involved with agriculture. I will tell you, I think most of the farmers that I've talked to support them. They realize that we need to get fair prices for our products. And if you look back for the last 4 years, we're not very far off of the prices we've had for the last 4 years, even prior to the tariffs. But I think that in the long run, most folks in agriculture believe that at the end of the day, we will hopefully be better off.
Okay. Next question. Have the redistricting discussion started for the next census? Does Western Kansas stand to lose Senate or House districts?
It has not started. It's going to take another year before we even get to that. Unfortunately, what I've heard talked about is that there's a possibility that we will lose people because more people are moving to Johnson County, Sedgwick County. I hope not, but we'll have to wait and see.
Okay. A bill was just introduced by new Democrat Representative Clayton to criminalize, excuse me as I take off my glasses, criminalize private transfers of firearms. What are your thoughts on this bill and other proposals referred to as, quote, universal background checks? Would you like me to reread that?
I am highly supportive of the Second Amendment, and I think most rural Kansans feel the same way. I have not seen the bill, so I can't comment on it on its face value, but it doesn't sound like something that I would be willing to be supportive of, but I have to look at it first.
I also support the Second Amendment, and I haven't seen the bill either.
And I also support the Second Amendment, and I haven't seen the bill yet either.
Okay. This is the last question that I have. Has the issue of licensing home inspectors been introduced?
this has been brought up, and I asked to get some information from the Kansas Association of Realtors. I know that they have started with the reviser who writes bills, and it is currently, once it gets done, is going to be funneled through the Senate first, is what I was told. I haven't seen what they've done, but I do know that there are so many times that home buyers in western Kansas and all over the state are harmed by non-insured, non-licensed inspectors who miss things. In fact, one of the representatives in my office suite just bought a new house less than 6 months ago, and all the pipes froze with all that cold weather, even though the heat was on, and it was discovered that all of the plumbing was put in incorrectly. They had a home inspection. It wasn't found, and he's responsible for the $6,000 worth of plumbing that has to be replaced. This is a problem, and we want to take care of homeowners and make sure that they're covered.
Okay. Well, that concludes today's legislative coffees. Thank you so much for all of you three for joining us. Certainly thanks to all of you. We can't hold these without the two of you being able to join us, and we greatly appreciate your time. Please give these three a round of applause.